Hello all, I am here to talk to you guys about tolerances for 3D printing. Specifically, what tolerances you're supposed to use and where to apply tolerances in your models. Tolerances for 3D printing is a very specific term and it has a lot of meanings, unfortunately. A lot of people think tolerances can be a degree of the printer's ability to print, but when it comes to the designer's size for tolerances, it usually means to what degree of specification they need within some kind of part-in-part sort of situation, where you have, let's say, a bolt and a screw, and you want the screw to go into the bolt. Now, if your tolerances are at 0, like the objects are actually fully next to each other, so in the model they are right next to each other, there's no gappage, they're not overlapping, they are full on each other. That would be called a 0 tolerance. And then you have issues with that. The objects won't fully connect properly because the 3D printers themselves will usually have a 0.1 millimeter to 0.3 millimeter sort of disparity when it comes to the actual printing. They can go above or below the needed amount and just extrude in different amounts. It's just the nature of the process. You're dealing with, thousands of layers sometimes, so you have to keep that in mind, that there's always going to be some degree of change from layer to layer. And so having this tolerance not be right next to each other, but spaced out a little, really helps. So if you have a amount of tolerance that allows for a little bit of play, as they say, and you have your screw and it goes in, it will, a proper way will be, it will go in and you'll be able to feel some resistance as it goes down, and then it'll be snug. That would be ideal. However, it's the actual number for the tolerance that you need to model, that little bit of a space, will depend entirely on how you're using the model and how you plan on putting it together. So if how you're using it is a screw, that's going to be, I want it a certain degree, I want a little bit of tension, and you might have to do a couple of small tests just to make sure you're at the correct tolerance. There's also a lot of printer tests that help you tune in what you need. Also, in addition to that, you also will have the post work. So your post-processing work after you're done with your model, you've taken off the supports, and then you're going to have to prime and sand and paint a lot of the time. So you're going to want not just a little bit, but a little bit more, just to make room for that primer and everything else that you're going to want to have your object look perfect. All right, now the last little thing. So we covered 0, positive, now let's cover negative. Negative is essentially only useful when you're trying to create a lot of pressure in a certain area. So if you have a 3D printed object where you have, let's say, a cylinder that's like this, and you want to close it off at pressure, but a normal 3D printed notch won't really work. So some people print in TPU or something, and instead of having the object fit perfectly in there, they'll make it a little bit bigger, and so they can squeeze it in, and the object is actually bigger than the hole, and that allows the TPU to crush on itself and be able to plug up that hole a little bit better. And that again, you have to really spend some time to tune exactly the tolerances that you need for that situation. What tolerance you use will greatly depend on how you're using it. I recommend that you do a printer test for your printer to really tune in specifically what tolerance you need. Sometimes you want it to be compression fit, so you want almost a 0 tolerance as long as you can fit it in there, hammer it in or whatever it is. Or you can do something where it is it's relatively snug, like it'll fit in, but if you sort of wiggle at it, it'll come out. And then other times you want it to be way too big. You want it to be relatively loose and wiggle around. This is very good for whenever you're trying to prime and sand your models, or if you're trying to just leave a lot of room for a larger mechanism that's in there and you need some degree of movement. So if you have some kind of complex gear system, it'd be ideal for that. Anyway, keep printing, keep having fun. All right, I hope this is useful to you guys. Have a good one. Alrighty, so if you guys can't find a good tolerance test, I have this one that's pretty easy. It's free, so that you guys can tune in specifically the needs. This one's just a simple socket test, which is really useful for just making sure your parts fit well within each other. It's just a simple sort of male-female connection. So there's also tons of them online. This is Thingiverse. So there we go. All sorts of other options as far as like tuning in what feel you want for your object. This is good for if you want something to be printed in itself. This is a pretty common one for overhang. Yeah. So you can just search and find what you need. All right. Have a good one.